One more thing, very important. Never hit a woman, even if she stabs you with scissors.
She doesn't love you. What you do next is going to be important.
All the gin joints and...
You're busy living.
I watched sea beams.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Well, this is a movie I really did want to like. I did like. First 5 minutes, 10 minutes, really started getting into it. And then it becomes a train wreck around minute 42. And frankly, if it weren't for me wanting to do a reaction on this movie, I probably would have shut it off after about minute 60 or minute 65 or 70. It becomes a train wreck. It's a coming of age story about a boy who may want to be a writer. That's already a difficult subject. I mean, you're going to have some good plot in this to flesh out the thoughts of the writer. You don't get any of that. There is no dialogue, virtually no dialogue with the main character in this movie, the boy, JR. He is basically a sponge for other people, for other characters in this movie. Some of them quite brilliant, quite fun, including his Uncle Charlie, who is his surrogate dad. And the reason he's a surrogate dad is because the real dad left before before JR even knew him. So you would think that would create a bunch of conflict, but this movie has virtually no conflict in it. Every movie's got to have drama, it's got to have conflict, but you just never know, almost never know what this boy is thinking. And then when he gets older, there's a 7-year gap between when he's a boy and then when he does get older and may go off to college and may have a girlfriend. That's when this whole thing goes off the rails. And there are several problems in this movie concerning that. The two characters, the young boy, the older boy, the young man, and everything else. But let's just go through this movie through my 8 categories, which are story, drama, writing, pacing, characters, acting, directing, and musical score. So the story on this is fine. It's a coming of age story. What do we want to be in life? What does this boy want to be? Maybe he wants to be a writer. That's what he says when he's 11 years old.
You read enough of those, maybe you could become a writer.
And I'm not going to be giving away there's not going to be any plot spoilers in this one. There will be in my long one. You can look at my hour and 20-minute deep dive into this movie, which I did because it's sort of a fascinating deep dive because of the fact that it just goes off the rails. But the story is fine. So, as long as you've got drama and good dialogue and everything else. But that's the second category. Drama is where it fails. This movie has almost no drama in it. Really. And what little drama there is mostly outside of the main character, the protagonist, the coming-of-age boy, JR. And that's mainly with his uncle.
Your father is deadbeat. I'll take care.
Uncle Charlie, who's a great character, greatly acted by Ben Affleck, who I hope gets an award for his performance in this. He's pitch perfect and a bit astereotypical, which I really enjoyed about this movie. I enjoyed several things about this movie. I'll get to those here in a little bit. But there's just no drama. The boy himself is mostly a sponge. He's talked to, but he rarely says anything. The reason I sort of like this for the first 40 minutes is that the young boy is played marvelously by Daniel Ranieri.
I want to back up Bobo.
Bobo, you backed up on the kid.
This kid's all right.
Who I also hope gets an award. And also, I just want to say as an aside that George Clooney, the director and also a producer on this, did a terrific job in directing young Daniel, and Ben Affleck and all the other characters. That's one aspect of his directing I really liked, as well as his cinematography. I'll get to that here in a minute. But the boy himself just rarely, he's around all these groups of people constantly throughout this movie. He's around the family. He's around college students. He's at the bar, the tender bar that his uncle owns. Then his uncle is also a bartender at the tender bar, and the young boy gets tendered advice, and he's at a tender age. Yeah, so that all works. Although this movie is not nearly at the bar enough really to call it the tender bar. I mean, it's only there maybe 7-8% of the time. The boy gets most of his advice outside of the bar. That's a problem with the movie. Really, they should have spent a whole lot more time at the bar itself. Those were my favorite moments in this movie. And they were quite well done, spectacular. But most of the fleshing out of the character, the drama in this is really in the facial expressions and the very few times that the young JR does speak. But it's not enough. So there's just no drama. I mean, really, you're wondering in this movie, what's the conflict? There just appears to be no conflict. So that is a problem with the third category, the writing. The writing on this forgets about the conflict, forgets about drama. It's a major flaw with this movie. And the second major problem with the writing is the voiceovers. You can't have voiceovers in movies, folks. You just can't do it. What they usually do and what they do in this movie is tell you what's going to happen or what somebody will be thinking or what is going to happen or what they will be thinking when you find out that anyway. So it just ends up being redundant and boring or preaching to you. It's a vanity device is what it is. So that's what it is in this movie. It's a vanity device. And it's not just monotonous, but it's annoying, as all voiceovers are. Even in one of my favorite sci-fi movies, Blade Runner. It's annoying. Don't do it. So the pacing on this movie is fine for the fourth category. The pacing is fine in this movie for the first 40 minutes. It's got kind of a British drama feel to it, and I love British dramas. So as long as I'm getting some feeling of character and drama, then that's okay. Of course, there's not much drama, so that's a problem. And they could bring in the drama with the derelict father. They don't really. They have a slight moment of drama, but that's not really involving the young JR. It's involving the derelict father and Uncle Charlie. And that's actually a really well done scene, well directed, well acted, everything. But it's not the protagonist. So you're sort of wondering why? And then there's the pacing in the last half of this movie. I'll say the last hour of this movie, more than the last half, is just dreadful. I mean, you just don't know where this movie's going. I mean, seriously, you don't know where it's going. So the pacing would be fine if you knew where it was going, because it would have that British drama pacing to it. But it doesn't. So then you get to the fifth category, the characters. There are several good characters in this movie, not the main character, the protagonist. This is obviously a problem. You like JR as a young person because of the acting of Daniel Ranieri. His facial expressions are exquisite. You feel like you know the boy, you get a sense of the boy, and a few times he does say something and you get the feeling that there's a lot of courage in his soul. Those are nice. Those are nice scenes. But frankly, the best characters are not as an older boy, he's just annoying.
He'll be calm.
Jeez, Mom.
What? It's okay. I don't have lipstick.
He's basically a coward, which shows up with a girlfriend.
Poor boy who wants a rich girl.
And he just keeps going back for punishment, and you're wondering, what the hell? What happened to the young JR who said what was on his mind? It's just baffling. It's just simply baffling. The best characters are the other characters. His Uncle Charlie, fascinating character.
What his name stands for. Doesn't stand for anything. His name is JR. Deal with it.
lovable character, a little bit of complexity in his character. A college student he's with.
She doesn't love you. What you do next is going to be important.
Fantastic acting. Wesley. Fantastic, fantastic. Exquisite, great writing, by the way. There are a few moments in this movie where there is really good writing. It's usually Uncle Charlie's character and Wesley's character. But Wesley's fascinating. The grandfather.
Oh, don't tell anybody I'm a good grandfather. Everybody will want one.
Is interesting and complex and not entirely stereotypical. Well done on that too. Great characters, all three of those. The mom is nice.
Yeah, how? But you are going to law school.
So you can...
Not really fleshed out enough. So you just don't really get a sense of her. She wants her boy to go to an Ivy League school. She's obsessed with that. But really outside of that, it's great acting, but you just don't get a sense of her, a really good, you sort of get a sense of her, but she's not as good of a character as Charlie and Wesley and the grandfather. So the acting, the sixth category, the acting it's just perfection on everybody's part. And part of that can be attributed to the great directing in that regard by George Clooney, but Ben Affleck and Daniel Ranieri and all of the other actors do an exquisite job. But a special kudos to Ben Affleck and Daniel Ranieri and the Wesley actor. And the directing on this is 50-50. 50% wonderful, 50% awful. That 50% wonderful is what I've already said is George Clooney's direction of the actors, their mannerisms, and just the way he sets up those scenes with them, and then the cinematography, terrific angles.
He really believes it.
You read all of those.
Maybe. You could become a writer.
Several times on this that sort of take your breath away. Very nicely done. The places where he really drops the ball is not insisting on having dialogue for the main character, J.R., both as a young boy and as a young adult. Should have seen that coming. We have got to get inside the mind of the writer. You can't just have a writer, a protagonist be inward. We can't always be trying to divine what he's thinking, which is what this movie does. There's got to be conflict. There's got to be an understanding of what he's thinking, what he wants in a particular situation. And the second problem with his directing is obviously the voiceovers, which I already mentioned. Just get rid of those. Those are the two main flaws. And the third flaw is his choice of the young adult actor and the mannerisms of that adult actor, Ty Sheridan, not being anything like the younger boy J.R. So he doesn't look like him at all, and he doesn't act like him at all. So there's a discontinuity between the first 42 minutes of this movie and the last hour of this movie. And it's unsettling. When you first see Ty Sheridan come on as the older J.R., you don't even know who it is. He looks so unlike him, and it's only been 7 years. So that's a problem. You can get away with that conceit in a movie if you have a consistency of mannerisms, a consistency of personality. But if you don't, it's not going to work, and it doesn't work here. The musical score on this movie is mostly 60s and 70s songs, and I thought it worked terrifically. It was just wonderful. I'm from that era, so I loved it each time, and it gives a nice sort of bouncy feel to the movie. I really liked George Clooney's pick on those songs. It was really good. But the main problem, as I said, with this movie is by the end of this movie, you don't really care anymore about that wonderful young boy. You really don't care. The adult character, JR, you stop caring. And at one point, even 5 minutes before the end of the movie, the way he treats a particular woman in the movie is really unsettling. And so you're like, wow, man. Wow, I know I'm supposed to like this boy, this guy. And it was a good feel-good movie for the first 40 minutes. But damn, I'm just not there anymore. Yeah, it ends up being a train wreck, as I said. So it's for all of those reasons that it ended up being that way. I think George Clooney had a pretty damn good idea going here with this. But he just dropped the ball on it. So yeah, if you want to see my deep dive into this, watch the longer review, has plot spoilers. Otherwise, if you decide you want to watch this movie, I might recommend turning it off at the 42-minute mark, unless you're a glutton for punishment. Okay, appreciate it, y'all. I look forward to your comments. Take care of yourselves. Bye now.